You kind of try to get them to play their greatest hits, but also ask them about, the sore spots without being a dick.
Yes. Yeah. You want to disarm them a little bit, with softballs or whatever. But because then there's times where an episode's done and I'm like, shit, I should have pressed them a little bit more on whatever. Mm-hmm. But then I'm also like, maybe I didn't need to, or maybe next time or whatever.
I think also, there's also the risk of, when you ask someone, if you don't press them enough, then people might think that you're in agreement with them. Because I'm kind of I'm nice. I don't try to be, I'm not a bitch on my podcast and not try to, persecute people for their beliefs. So if I really dig down and ask people about their beliefs about phrenology and stuff like that, and if I'm not too pushy about it, they might think, oh, actually, Alex agrees with this guy. So
that is a thing, because like Keith had mentioned the thing, and I was like, shit, should I say something? And I'm like, no, it's not even worth it. And then I'm like, is someone going to think that I agree with Keith about this? And I'm like, I don't know. It's whatever. People are going to formulate whatever off of that. It's just how it is. You can't control the reaction.
Yeah, and if you get too deeply involved with something like that in a disagreement, early on in a conversation or something, you might put up a wall or two that you don't intend to actually put up there. And then it makes it a little bit harder to actually dig through to see what it is you do agree on, which is ultimately what I'm a little bit more interested in.
Yeah, and Keith Woods is a very smart guy, I have to say, without agreeing with everything that he's ever said. But yeah, he's a great, conversationalist, just super deep into, history, political science, all that stuff. So yeah, he's definitely someone people should be talking more
about. I think we had a very productive conversation with him. And then when that thing comes up, it's just crickets and you move past it.
That thing
where disavow and
that thing we're talking about, of course, being ivermectin.
No, bro. If ivermectin comes up, I'm repping it hard.
The IQ, the ivermectin question.
So I'm at Slavoid T.
All right, this is Shit Spouter 37.
This is Black.com pilled.
This is the Fed Post.
All right. So, okay, let's see. We don't have to get too much into detail about this, this Texas law thing. I mean, I don't know if this even if you're even aware of all this stuff, Alex, out in Romania, or there's I mean, I don't know if this is we don't need to be too current about it, but yeah, I mean, the abortion thing has come back in conversation, all that. I mean, I don't know if you got this is as soon as there's a culture war thing, I sort of tune out a little. So I don't have strong feelings about this. I don't know if Slav or Alex, if you guys have any feelings about this, or you think it's just a trending thing.
Abortion's always going to be there. I do hope that we never stop talking about it, because it's one of those things that it really is a complex moral question. It's not something, it's very hard to actually come down on it and, unthinkingly just say, oh, this is right, this is wrong. It's really tough. And I mean, now I've recently had a baby, and I'm a completely changed person. I really have, I'm just a different person now after crossing that threshold, and I have a completely different perspective on it. That it's a baby. That's what I can say. While it's in there, it's a person, and it's doing stuff, and you're connected on a crazy level with it. And it's such a transcendent, weird experience that you really cannot simulate if you're outside of it. You kind of have to go through it to understand it. So, it's really tough. Just imagining, just kind of callously, disposing of this person, and also kind of getting to meet my baby and just loving it more than anything in the world, after it's been born. It's, just the insanity of dismissing this question, like, off the bat and saying, oh, it's chill, it's a clump of cells. I mean, you're a clump of cells. It's maybe a little bit more complex, but, where's the line? Where do we draw the line? So
yeah, I feel like you're like the angle you just had on it is like kind of dead on the money, because personally, this my own opinion here, but like I ultimately still do, probably come down as pro-choice, but but just where this whole thing is right now, I think that just like lib discourse around abortion is just like one of the ugliest examples I can think of just like bourgeois decadence. It
ties right in with the anti-natalism bullshit too.
100%. That's a great point.
Yeah, these things are gross. We don't need any more people. Fuck, like all things about life, whatever. It's just completely nihilistic, like terrible bullshit. Like it doesn't take into account any of the actual like moral nuance involved in it at all. It just like posits that like, oh, there's no morals to this at all. There's no type of morality here involved. It's just purely, this is nothing. Which is, I think it's not really fair to sum up that way, even no matter how you really feel about it.
Yeah, and I think COH and I are probably like, I'm going to put words in your mouth here. I feel like we probably have a pretty similar position here, which is like, I think that it does kind of come down to a class issue at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And I do think the other day I kind of had a sly post of just like, what if we just had, significantly like a lot, much more severe limitations on abortion for people above a certain income bracket or something like that. Because the idea, because this stuff is, these ways are carried a lot more by poor people, people that need to, just the absolute demonic decision you have to make of getting an abortion because you just simply can't. You can't
provide the life that's like going to be any type of like productive or safe or healthy for a child or yourself, possibly.
Exactly. And like, that's horrifying. Right. You see these broads in like Brooklyn Low that, it's like, what was that post everyone was sharing? Like
they're rocking the uterus graveyard. They're talking about like, yeah, I've had like 8 abortions and I still don't feel shit about it and keep drinking my iced coffee, bitch.
Exactly. Now, at the same time too, not to, that's my position, right? At the same time though, like I also am just like encouraged generally to see like much more what's the word? Like substantive people on the right taking the reins on certain issues, as opposed to this kind of like nihilistic neocons that are just kind of like, pay lip service to cultural conservatism and then actually don't push it in any direction. And so even though I might not even like agree with them ultimately on this issue, I would rather have them at the helm and like take that W than just like these like free market vapid demon people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think the main question here is about individualism, and how do we see, where does one individual end, and is there an overarching obligation to a more collective dimension, be it your family, be it your community, be it humanity in general. And I think neoliberalism is essentially, the answer is no. This is essentially what it means. There is no, and you are here to be either a perfect consumer or a perfect recipient of whatever the state wants to give you, because you're nothing on your own, obviously, because you need a form of collective support in any way, because we are that type of primate that exists in a collective, and if you don't have a natural collective, there comes the market to plug it in if you have enough money, or the state to offer you a crutch if you're that destitute, or have destroyed yourself pursuing whatever individualism you were offered. So I think on the issue of abortion, that's essentially the question. It's not like, I know that in cases of rape or things like that, these are like the edge cases that always kind of break the whole argument apart, because these are extremely rare, obviously. But in most cases, this is a preventable situation. Usually, you can really take a lot of precautions. And the downside that's presented always is that you lose your freedom. Yes, you lose your freedom, but you also have an obligation to that child once it's there. It really isn't just, the parameters of the question aren't just about you. They're not just about you. They're also about the father, which is something that almost never comes into the discussion. Like, what are his obligations? What are his rights in regards to this child? It's a shit show, and the libs really don't want to open up that can of worms. And I'm kind of heartened that there's a more nuanced conversation on the right, like you just said. People are really starting to think about these problems, or really starting to, to look at these edge cases, but also to look at kind of the philosophical underpinnings, like why are things like this, and how should they be, about natural law and things like that. So I don't know, that's been attractive to me. That's kind of why I ended up in these corners. It's a much more, flourishing conversation. It's not dumb.
No, absolutely. And like hell, like just the foregone conclusion that's made by a lot of people, that just like constantly being sexually active is like not just something that like needs, like just the fact that is never negotiable, right? Mm-hmm. That like,
well,
like
that's ultimate freedom there, right?
Right. And in this, right. It's this swinging in the other direction. I feel like so much of it is like kind of in response to like abstinent sexual education. I remember that always being a thing people talked about. Right. And so now it's that you can't ever expect anybody to abstain from sex, which is also really ironic just because everyone's like in agoraphobic
right. I was about to say,
now,
nobody's
right?
fucking anyways, apparently.
Yeah, nobody's fucking anyways. But if they do, it needs to be like ideologically inflated. So,
yeah, but, that's a key part of the hyper reality, bro.
No. Okay, there it is.
In what way can you expand on that?
If you can keep people like caught in this like idea that like, oh, well, everyone's fucking all the time. And like, you need to be constantly into that, even though you aren't like yourself, you can go on believing that like this reality that you yourself are experiencing to not be true is actually the good and real existing reality that's going on around you. It's just like another very like baseline level of which they're just like flipping into like upside down world type of reality. And it's also like it creates these like, it's like the consumerization of more sacred acts. There's like neoliberalism essentially sinks its claws into any type of like sacred act or any type of boundary of human relations or any type, and tries to like erode those away. And then it just tries to make them profane. So now it's like the profanation of all culture, to where now we're all like, it's promiscuity culture, where actually that's the best thing and the most natural way to live, and this, that, and the other, disregarding the fact that like, sometimes there are things in life that we hold to be a little bit more sacred or above just pure natural drive, that I think sometimes it's good to actually do that. And that's kind of part of what being a human being is kind of balancing, well, what is my instinctual drive here? And what do I think is like morally correct and the right way for me to live my life? And people are just trying to like negate the whole aspect. I don't know, it's a very nihilistic bullshit too. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's and also like in addition to all this, just like, look, I mean, we literally just to keep the wheels on economically, we literally rely on letting people in. I mean, I don't know what the case is in Romania, right? But talking stateside, we rely on a lot of fucking immigration, right? And this is on top of the fact that we have like rampant homelessness already. And, I made the case earlier that, I think that abortion is maybe an unpleasant, necessary thing given the current situation. But I mean, look, like at the same time also, like, you have this, like so many cases, like this kind of like plateaued, depressed birth rates in Western liberal countries. And if we actually just changed our fucking approach to how we, supported family planning and all these things like that, I think that the argument of just the factors of poverty and everything on this situation are totally contingent. It doesn't need to fucking be this way. You know what I mean? We don't literally need to be. You get what I'm saying? I think that that's a serious thing to consider as well.
Yeah, I think this term neoliberalism. A lot of people make fun of it, and it's kind of this. It does describe this overarching situation that we're in, but I don't necessarily think that it's like a centralized thing. I think it's like an emergent situation that happens kind of in a way at the end of need, at the end of friction. Obviously, there are people that are more needy and they experience more friction in society, but we're at the point where to make surplus value in the economy, you're not really making widgets, or, you're not really fulfilling needs. No one's, you're not really providing a relief to hunger and rain coming into your house. You're creating dopamine triggers. You're essentially gaming the lizard brain to milk it. And the people who are gamed the most are actually the people at the bottom of the hierarchy. If you go into a poor neighborhood, it's all, I don't know, in England it's Paddy Power, I don't know, like these kind of mini casinos and betting parlors and, I don't know, dollar stores and places where you can buy just, junk and things like that. So it's, you're gaming these essentially neurotransmitters at that point. And I feel like that's kind of where this power comes from, because what this tells us is that you really don't need people around you. You don't need your family. You don't, it's kind of like almost like a revealed preference, they call it in economics. Like, you could say you want something, but actually you need to observe how people actually act to be able to make economic predictions about their behavior. And a lot of people's revealed preference is that they would like the hyper-palatable food. They would like to, be hikikomori shut-ins and watch porn 6 hours a day, or, however many hours is possible. They would like to just, play a certain simulation and not interact with, the friction of real life, with real people. They don't want to get in the argument with the baker. They're just going to order everything online, or all of these things are possibilities now, and it's
and add on to that fact, I mean, this is something that I feel myself, like, I go to the fucking stores in my neighborhood and it's like, oh, there's a sneeze guard up, there's still stickers on the fucking floor. Do I need to wear a mask at this place? Do I not need to? How close should I stand to people? What am I, you know what I mean?
Who's going to freak out if you walk in? And you're
exactly. What's the demonic trigger word that these people have had? Just
ivermectin.
Right. Blasted into their brains like Hypnotoad style. Like,
he's been watching the news shut in like 24/7.
Right. Exactly. And like so many times this week, just running errands after work, I'm just like, honestly, like, I don't even like going out in this.
Yeah.
This fucking sucks. And like, that's not even who I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like the deconstruction of all social relations, like to the most like base things. You don't even know really where to start anymore. You're like feeling like maybe you're having to like relearn, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do in this store anymore. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do in this store anymore. It might be different from this one down the street. So like you're always just up in the air and confused. Like you don't really actually know exactly what the set state of reality is or who. Like that's another part. Like they can prop it up constantly to where you're confused. You're always just kind of bewildered into between what's the next edict, what's the next order, what's the next thing I need to do that I'm not actually used to, or like what's the next social relation that I have to like wrap my brain around and understand that's just coming out of nowhere. That's just some made up bullshit. And like what you're saying about and making it like harder for you to want to go outside or like go down to the store because it's just miserable. Or like Alex was saying, where people don't want to go and actually have the social interaction in the first place with an actual person because it's just easier for them to, I don't know, order the thing online. And it's like that leaks over as well into what we were talking about before with like promiscuity culture, because people are like not wanting to actually put themselves out there and experience a real intimate relationship. So instead they want to just put that into the market, and they can like get these little apps, they can get little things, string together meaningless hookups and things left and right, and try to get a fulfillment of that type of life though, but without actually putting in the work to actually build these relationships and things that are actually like sacred bonds between people. It's just instead, let's just fill that hole on the market.
Yeah. And it's, when essentially, humans are machines created to overcome friction, overcome hardship. And, once you remove many layers of that friction, I mean, I know there's a lot of metaphors stuck into this. Humans aren't machines and they're not necessarily created and all this stuff. But essentially, the purpose, there is a purpose to how humans exist. And it is to engage with their environment, to be creative, to overcome, and all of this effort imbues things with meaning. And what are they overcoming things for? They're overcoming things for their group, for their family, for their friends, for the people close to them. Once you sever, one, the friction and the hardship, and then two, the ties to the group because of the friction, then there's not really much left. And then you're just kind of on these hedonic treadmills, running on empty. And obviously, you're there for predation. You're there, you're opening up your limbic system to all of these providers to come to plug into their systems and I don't know, stroke your neurotransmitters until you lull yourself to sleep.
No, yeah, I think that's a great point because, that's something I always notice of like, the abundance we have has sort of killed a lot of the needs. It's killed a lot of the reasons for traditional right-wing social values and things along those lines. Like you have everybody sort of like, I remember like when I was younger, because I've always been atheist, but I was like 13 or something, like watching like Hitchens debate like theologists or whatever. And they'd make these arguments like, what's the point of getting to heaven if there's no hardship on the pathway or whatever? And I always thought that was a dumb argument when I was younger, but it makes complete sense. It's completely true because it's like there's really, you can't. Anybody who's lived long enough, has obviously seen this in their own life. Like you can't really have any highs without any of the lows, obviously. So like you need to do that, but
it's cliche for a reason because it's like a natural truth.
Exactly. And I think we're sort of, a lot of us are born, especially the younger generation, are born into this sort of frictionless world, and they just they have no sense of like all the hardship that went towards that. So they're sort of, their gauge is all screwed up. And they feed into that obviously for obvious reasons.
Yeah, then they experience a different type of friction altogether, which is just like this like internal gnawing of like existentialism of not understanding what the fuck it is that is making them feel so just like inept or not great, or like, these things that's making them feel not at home in the world that they live in, and being so just like removed from the actual physical reality around them. They create that space intentionally.
It reminds me of just like the idea of I was reading some Lash lately, and he's talking about the culture in which it became more and more normal for parents to just kind of assure their children that they just have innate value, that just innately they're just so great on their own. And like, obviously like, my mom and my dad, like, humble brag here on the podcast, my mom and my dad love me, guys. But like, but like just this idea of like, you're great as you are, as opposed to like how the world like actually works, which is like your value like in a lot of ways obviously comes from like what you do, what you produce.
People know they're useless and they act like it. They lash out and then in weird ways, and they create these strange, Baroque identities around that core knowledge that they wouldn't survive for like half an hour in the wilderness. They should be Wolverine shish kebab in 5 seconds.
Yeah, telling that Wolverine before he sinks his teeth into you that you're sapiosexual or
my pronouns are
right, exactly. And I mean, this just isn't even a coherent way of thinking about the self. But I guess that might be another.
If you're not someone who's agoraphobic or hypochondriac, whatever, they're definitely turning you into one. You know what I mean? Like, they're definitely like pushing you towards that mindset.
Dude, I feel like even customer service and shit has just been like complete dog shit since the pandemic started too. So like even when you go out and try to experience like doing the things that you used to be able to do, it's like A, there's a huge labor shortage and stuff like that, so there's not as many people working, but also B, like it's been used by companies and stuff as a way to just streamline and cut out any type of like useful thing for this the actual consumer. And so it's just like miserable experience after miserable experience. They're not offering the same type of services that they did, or it's not quite in full anymore. And it's just like, dude, what the fuck am I even here for?
Economy, yeah. Exactly.
I tried to get in touch with Facebook support for like a business thing for some ads I was doing in my day job, and it's literally like a never-ending circle that they put you in. There literally is no Facebook support for my side of the business. There is no one. It's just one of those things that sends you to a form that doesn't get sent anywhere, and it just puts you in an infinite loop, and that's customer support. So you never get to talk to anyone.
Now.
Dude, honestly, like I have a few friends that do it, and like I've obviously just interacted with it before. I feel like most people have, but like just technical help desk, this department that exists in basically every medium to large company is like actually a pretty good indicator of just how post-COVID life everywhere is now, of just like this weird little circle of half accountability, and no one just the only certain thing is that no one's actually full on reading the thing you're saying and like coming up with an original response to it that's handcrafted by a fucking person. And it's not just the old call center thing of like, oh, I don't want to talk to a fucking robot. It's also it's like this Baroque system to just file down every sharp object, and it's just a fucking nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare. I don't want these fucking sneeze guards up anymore. I want to ask someone a fucking question. Anyways, the world's a DMV.
Speaking of the sneeze guards, just real quick, they came out and said that actually it turns out sneeze guards and plastic barriers, the CDC thinks that they're actually probably accelerating the spread of COVID rather than inhibiting it, because of the fact that it's just leaving all those particles and shit right there at everyone's face level.
No way, bro. Wait.
Yeah.
Were you saying that like 2-foot glass that like
of course,
of space in the midair is not effective? What?
Yeah, you're saying that thing that I have to clean every single day at work and put my hand near that people are coughing and breathing on, that I didn't. Sometimes I lean over and I accidentally bump my forehead on. You're telling me that's not helping me not get COVID?
You're telling me this.
I'm going to fact check this later.
Yeah, you're telling me this for the first time.
These are wonderful guards, little plastic things there.
Right. Yeah, but if you think about the mechanism of this stuff, it's like they just put it up, but they can never walk it back. Like, that's the thing. How these, even with the vaccines and everything, all of these systems they're put in place at one point, through one swift decision, and to justify that decision, to justify that agency or whatever, that's come up with this shit, you can never walk it back, because it would mean you'd have to fire all these people, to deconstruct this, complex machinery that you've built, and also admit that you were wrong. And if you admit that you were wrong, you have to admit that science was wrong, and you just can't do that because science is science, and science changes from one day to the other, and you need extra agencies. But the sneeze guards are never coming down. The children always wear the mask. Everyone needs the boosters. You can't walk this stuff back. It only goes from simple to more complex and more ridiculous with every iteration.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't walk it back. You need to double down on it, and so these offals,
triple masking.
Yeah, exactly, and like all these offals that just get more, just are just regurgitating more and more, just like violently hateful rhetoric, and not like in this weird, like hate. Hate is like a school of magic in modern political thought. Like, oh, hate, it's a thing. It's like a thing you can touch, but just like hateful in that, like, they just hate people. They hate people that are their political opponents. You just double and triple down on that.
Yeah, and they infinitely hate them in a kind of in a productive way, in the sense that they're backed up by the powers that be. They're encouraged to hate them. They're validated to hate them. They're essentially fed through this validated hate from up high. You're garnering status. You're harvesting status by hating these people harder and harder because they're the underclass. They're the other. So fuck these people. And it's and there's a certain kind of it's the awful. It's kind of that stereotype of in a way, highly agreeable person who's just there to go along to get along, and is really, can smell status from a mile away. And it's that archetype, and it's shitty. It is the like middle-aged white woman who's just like has her antennae geared towards where status is coming from.
It's like you were saying, it's like a state-sanctioned hatred. It's like that kind of goes back to what you're talking about with the friction thing, because like stuff like that, releases like that are actually necessary for people to have, not necessarily hatred, but like those types of communal releases as a people and as a community. But they're actually taken out of our lives and society nowadays just based upon the way that we live. So what they can do is they can just instead sanction it out through like emotional means, and then use it like functionally like this as like a way to just like, as a discursive method, rather than actually like having the moment where the community can get together. Like for instance, like Hasidic Jewish people and other types of like tribes and stuff like that, they'll like get some sort of animal, like a chicken or a goat or whatever, and they'll cast all their like town's demons into it. And then they'll like exercise it. They'll kill the goat at the end of the day. They'll do this and that. And it's all very like ceremonial. It's very sacrificial. But in that, it's almost like a
COH tells our audience to kill animals.
No. Don't do that. But yeah, exactly. It's a scapegoat.
It's in Leviticus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's useful. I mean, you have to do it's either an animal or it's just one person. But now it's like half of your guys' country. So I don't know. That's scaled up quite fast.
Yeah, you can't materialize it into like a single person or thing anymore because you can't actually materially go about doing that thing. So now it's like this very immaterial, very like ideologically based thing where they can say, oh, it's actually like going to be hate instead of like actually taking something out of a community. So in that sense, like it's a little bit of a weaker release. So it has to be spread out further and multiplied a little bit more and more and more.
Yeah, well, Christianity solved the problem by, kind of having the scapegoat be Christ, but having him be the most pure person and essentially kind of breaking that scapegoat mechanism. This is what René Girard talks about, that kind of this is a genius of Christianity, that it realized the necessity of the scapegoat mechanism, but it turned the whole mechanism towards this one most pure person so that it would be just so absurd that it broke the whole mechanism. And that's kind of that was his theory related to Christianity and why it was so useful and why it kind of revolutionized the West, because turn the other cheek is not a very instinctive thing to, like, I don't know, tribal people, Bedouins don't do this type of stuff, but Christianity kind of had that innovation. Obviously, if you don't necessarily keep up the good work with that type of stuff, the internal logic of Christianity breaks down, and like you said, Slav, importing people from different cultures does tend to erode this type of stuff as well. Not that Christianity was, doing a great job maintaining itself in the West either, but everything kind of accelerates when you have total diversity.
Oh yeah. It kind of reminds me of like someone made a post the other day. I'm not really going anywhere in particular with this, but someone made a post the other day that was like, this is a picture of school in like Denmark or one of these fucking countries. And this is a picture of school in Baltimore or something. And, one is the kids walking with their fucking hands behind their, whatever the fuck sicko shit they're making kids do, and the mask and all that. Right. And then, then this other country, it's just like, they're just walking around. But also you look at the other country, they're all blonde hair, they look like the same child, right? And it's just like, well, this might also have something to do with the difficulty, not to come out full ethno-nationalist or anything, but it's like, it's
taking
a quiet pill. Right. It's a quiet detail.
All the pills.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's something too with that Amazon, the Bezos memo, where he was like,
That's a great example.
Increase diversity to break up solidarity, basically. Yeah, that makes sense.
This is kind of like super robust social science, and it's like Putnam, the guy who discovered this effect, was a total lib, and he I think he hid it for a few years until he actually pulled the trigger and published it because it was so incontrovertible. Like, effect size was huge. That diversity is not our strength necessarily. It actually leads to social erosion and erosion of social capital. But it's a really tricky one, and I think if this is your purpose as a society, if you want to be the most diverse society, go for it. If this is your value, you just need to make it essentially almost like a religious value. You need to understand the religious nature of it. You can't turn it into science. Diversity is our strength. People take it as they try to puff it up with all sorts of like social science studies that are not only not replicable, but they're absolutely shit. On the face of it, they're just n equals 8. Sample size of two of your friends in a college dorm,
Right.
and they try to make it seem like it's science. Make the most. Make your country a humanitarian superpower, but understand that this is a unique thing in humanity. This is not natural, and invest all of your powers in making it so. And it might work, but it really won't work if you don't accept the realities underlying all of this stuff. If you just try to pretend, it's science, that, everyone is equal and everything's fine and all the groups will just get along perfectly if we just, try harder and, kill the racists or whatever,
Yes.
Kill the naysayer.
Well, it's funny because I think reading between the lines of just where progressives are at these days and just like the amount of like racism directed towards white people and, the places where they jettison some liberal values and everything. I think reading between the lines, it kind of like it is kind of a tell of the truth of a lot of this shit, right? Like the old metrics and the way we used to talk about like the strength of diversity and everything are now like punchlines in Jordan Peele movies. You know what I mean? Like just what in the entirety of like Get Out was about is almost kind of like making fun of that shit. And it's like, well, okay, so you can kind of this is like the sound of a lot of people identifying that this maybe isn't all it was cracked up to be as a goal. And then just, like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory and just doubling down on just like a more insane version of pursuing it.
I think it's also the problem is, they've been trying since the civil rights era, they've been trying to equalize, and there's been, huge investments in, No Child Left Behind and, crazy programs, the war on poverty, all this stuff. And right. Things haven't gotten better. They have, in some cases, gotten worse. And the social degradation that followed all these, great incentive programs, like the war on poverty, or even worse, single motherhood and all the stuff that, social conservatives like to harp on about. All this type of stuff has gone downhill. And things are not working. So they either, there's two options now. You either accept the fact that there are inherent inequalities in either, across averages or within groups of people, within preferences, like between men and women. Women just typically don't want to be, astrophysicists as much as men, even if, in some cases they might have the capacity. It's just not that interesting. But also they probably don't have the capacity in many cases. I'm just going to go out and say it. So there are differences across groups, between people. This is something that our flavor of liberalism will not accept. So the only other option is to double down on egalitarianism. And if all these programs don't work, there has to be a ghost in the machine, and the ghost is systemic racism. There are subtle ways that you can't actually sniff out, you can't really expunge, in which Whitey is being bad, or something is going really wrong, and it's that's why why is Ibram Kendi such a big deal? Because no one's got the balls to confront him, because he's riding on that wave. What's someone gonna say? Like, oh, actually, Kendi, you're wrong. What's the counter argument to the ghost in the machine? Classical liberalism, it doesn't work. We've been trying that approach. That's essentially what's been tried. It's not going to work if we do it harder. So yeah, it's a conundrum. So people either accept that, there might be differences, or it's we're going to be battling the hydra of systemic whatever for the until the end of time.
It's the big hydra of white supremacy, and also just there's like this assertion that everybody is just kind of gray goo that's been poured into a differently shaped human mold, but there's absolutely nothing that actually really makes us different fundamentally, like is big in gender ideology and things like that. And it's kind of funny, like watching some of my like friends and I still have friends that I've known a while that are definitely like pretty NPC, but I'm not gonna try to I'm certainly not gonna cut off long-standing relationships because people are brainwashed due to systems that are outside of their control. But like you hear some of them talk about like the relationship with their girlfriend or whatever, and it's like you're threading this needle while maintaining that like there's basically no difference between the two of you in this relationship, and it's funny to just watch this like completely. I mean, it's doomed. It's completely insane. Usually what ends up happening is that like the man is just completely domesticated and just doesn't have a workable like worldview. But yeah, that's another aspect, because I think, because a lot of normies that I know in real life too really can't fully buy into the whites the specter of white supremacy that hangs over everything a lot of the time, because they're fucking white, and just because it's so obviously not related to anything in their real life, and so everything also just kind of just comes down to like what even is a human? You can't define anything.
It's a weird one, especially like in relationships between men and women, like you said. It really does help the relationship if you can understand these differences. I think it's probably one of the key things, if you want to have a good relationship, to be in a relationship with someone who understands the kind of inherent differences between men and women. Are these set in stone? No, there is some give in the system. There are differences individually. Like, I'm a very disagreeable woman, obviously, but that's not very common. But that's kind of one of the things that make me a little bit different. But at the same time, the best thing I could do with my husband is just to really understand. We have like pretty much almost medieval division of labor in our household. I do the woman stuff, he does the man stuff. Things go amazingly. Obviously, I don't know, late night podcasting is probably one of the exceptions, but you kind of, I don't know. Just in my experience, it really, really helps. And I don't know. It's just a great relationship. I can only recommend it to everyone. But it's really a hard thing to sell, especially to women, because it feels so disempowering. Like, oh, I have to cook all the time. Yeah. Is it really that bad? I mean, occasionally he'll cook. That's fine, especially now with the baby. I'm not saying that he never does it, but it's your responsibility, and he has his own responsibilities, and it's absolutely fine. Everyone knows what they have to do. Everyone knows what their role is. And it's great.
My girlfriend cooks, and I fucking work full time. Like it's common sense, you know what I mean? And it feels good, and we like it. It's interesting. I was talking with my buddies, someone I know that actually listens to this show, and so I'm going to call him out. But I've known him forever, so it's okay. A lot of political disagreements in his home, to the point where she's vaccinated, he's not, right? She has taken to wearing a mask in their home when they're together. What? In bed while they're sleeping together.
What? Yeah,
I'm sorry, bro. I had to bring it up.
Bless your heart, bro.
At a certain point, like you're doing your girlfriend or wife a disservice by like allowing this to even fucking happen. You know what I mean? Like it's, I don't know. I don't even want to go too far into it, just to say, I think that one thing that can really
control your woman, bro.
I'm like unironically saying that. I'm genuinely saying that to a certain extent. And I'm saying that with the understanding too, that cuts both ways. right? There are ways in which, I mean, look, like if I was going and texting all these other fucking girls, you know, talking to other women, you know, like if my girlfriend just did not react at all, like, no, come on, right? Yeah, I mean, I think you see this a lot. Like in a lot of relationships, you can, you know, and obviously there's exceptions to everything, right? Everybody knows the guy who, you know, becomes a lot more libbed up, blue-pilled kind of guy once he starts dating a girl who he just can't fucking say no to. You know what I mean?
The girl, girlfriend chameleon.
Yeah, exactly. And like not even that, but like actually just starting to get radicalized by this shit. And it's like you know, I'm not saying that that's what's happening, you know, in the example that I gave, but you know, at a certain point, like you need to be able to fucking like assert your fucking values at some point.
I mean, she is acting like that because he's not asserting his fucking values. Like, you know,
exactly.
If he would stand up to her, you know, that would get, you know, that would put some fire in that relationship, because that sounds absolutely insane. You know, I think men often underestimate how far they can push it with standing up to women, and not even just how far they can push it, like how much is expected of them in terms of standing up. You know, you should, like, that's your responsibility. You know, we need you to be strong. We need you to, you know, put your foot down. You know, if you never do that, then that relationship is doomed. Or, you know, it might continue, but there's not really respect in there.
Yeah.
Like,
well, even in any healthy relationship, even if you're not even looking at like a gender lens, just telling your partner, or even if it's not even like a romantic relationship, it could be platonic. If you're a friend with someone, whatever, if you realize that they're doing some crazy bullshit, you got to call them out on it, because that's what you fucking do. And that's how you like maintain a relationship. And then if there's a problem with it, you call them out on it, you try to work through it. And if it doesn't work out, then that relationship is no longer. Like, this is fucking
1960s shit with like the only thing that's forbidden is to forbid. You know what I mean? Like, it's fucking bullshit. Like, if you're a man, you should have some level of leadership in your household, because like you're sharing a culture with this other person, and you know, especially if you're bringing kids into the mix and all of that. Like you have some capacity of leadership, and all you see in the wide culture generally is basically just repeat it. And I can't blame people for reacting this way, but basically just repeating to young men, like, if you break our social protocols, you will be socially destroyed. And so I don't totally blame people for shrinking from this challenge in life. But it's not functional, and you're gonna basically some voodoo is gonna be put on you, and you're gonna shrink down and get put in a little glass jar.
I think men kind of need to understand that there's like kind of this valley that they have to cross with being disagreeable and putting their foot down. You know, if you're really agreeable and you go along to get along, you're probably going to have a middling life. You know, you're never going to have a terrible, you know, you're never going to be ostracized in a terrible way. But if you hold your stance, and if you can cross that valley, that deep, dark valley where, you know, people actually, you know, they oppose you, and, you know, they're not happy with you, and you get to the other side and you still kind of keep your, you know, you keep frame, you keep your composure, you transcend. You know, people want that. People want that type of leadership. People want, you know, people who can hold their own. And like you said, COH, this is also about friends, and, you know, being an example in your community of friends. And, you know, that's that kind of spark, that kind of, you know, resistance to friction that almost no one has anymore. You know, everyone folds.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom you get in getting canceled and sort of conducting yourself the same way regardless. Yeah. There's a lot of just after that, then what else is there? You get canceled again?
Yeah,
like,
that's just called being an adult with principles.
It's like the fool whose response to complex social protocols and expectations is to just right out of the gate just like act in kind of a profane way, so that he's just no longer on the hook for any of this bullshit. Yeah, exactly. Like before I even, you know, say word one, I'm just gonna throw my middle finger up to this shit. It's interesting because I think that with COVID stuff, I was talking to somebody about this, you know, recently. I think that COVID has really like taught me the importance of adjusting my expectations and being wary of people that are weak. And I don't mean that in like this really brutal kind of like social Darwinist way where it's, you know, where it's just like, I guess just to say it in a hateful way or something, but specifically, you know, knowing there's been a lot of weird gray areas with COVID protocol, social stuff, things like that. And, you know, I'm not vaccinated. And there's just times where, you know, there's a lot of people, you know, Alex, you just mentioned people don't have resistance for friction anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, at least, right? This situation has removed all doubts about who does and does not qualify in that camp, you know, and they can't back you up in situations where you need support and you need help from somebody, and you need a little bit of dependability, because they're weak and they can't possibly, tolerate an uncomfortable situation for somebody that they might, you know, have some kind of claim to have some loyalty to. And you just can't invest in that. You know what I mean? Yeah, but there's also if the state is like literally like going around like with choppers in Australia or whatever, you know what I mean? I think there's this thing on the right where it's like, oh, I'm like BAP, I'm naked and bodybuilding, and I'm just gonna be Chad and Giga Chad my way through all this. Is like, bro, we're talking about big collective things, and like your individual actions don't really mean shit. In my opinion, I don't believe in like. Well, and we're literally talking about individual. We're literally talking about interpersonal relationships right now. Like, I'm not like you're saying like the COVID authoritarianism in general, right? Yeah, like, exactly. Like, but well, in like just the entire enforcement of it just being this like weird, decentralized, constantly vaguely defined social protocols, right? I'm not talking about like, oh man, like my friend didn't, you know, risk going to the gulag for me or something like that. It's always just like little shit, right? Which of course I can't think of an example of right now. You're talking about the gray, right? You said the gray areas, right? Like the in-between moments where it's like, what are we supposed to do? Is this the rule? Is that the rule? Exactly. Where it hasn't been clearly laid out. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's what everything is now, because it's like this passing of the buck, just like across all types of like across organization of production. You know, you have middle managers and you have lower managers, and none of them really have any power. And the people that you're talking to on the phone for customer service, none of them really know what's going on. They don't have any power to tell you what's going on. They don't really know themselves either. And so it's just like that just goes across all fucking society, and it just reaches out until no one knows down from up. Yeah, and I remember like to CRK's point, I saw this post the other day from that Alexander Cortez. He's like a workout right wing guy or something, and he had some post he made about like, if you're not willing to just, you know, completely just burn everything down in your life and start over, then you don't build the right wing commune. Basically, you don't. What do you say? He's like, then you don't truly love yourself. Right. And it's like that is insane. That's insane. And that's also like that is like, I get what he's saying, and obviously there's like a kernel of truth, right? But I think actually like Paul Scholes had the response to it, which is just like, this is, you know, he basically said, you know, this is the thought of someone who's not in a relationship, right? Like that's what it is, right? And that's it's hyper individual, and so, you know, to your point, it's totally not lost on me, and you're right. Yeah, this is my problem that I have with kind of like with Baptism and this type of, you know, kind of Ubermensch right wing individualism. It really is like super atomized. It's like, it's okay. It's about the pirate philosopher king, not his children, because they're in the longhouse, not his wife. She's in the longhouse. You know, any sort of adjacents, or, you know, except for like the Band of Brothers or whatever, equals among kings and all this type of stuff. Right. The pirates. Yeah. The other pirates on the ship or whatever. Right. There is no dependency. There is no kind of meta story. There is no entanglement for these guys. You know, they are, you know, masters of the universe. And I think, you know, Earth can support, you know, I do buy into the great man of history theory, but there needs to be kind of at least a parallel system that takes care, that includes the longhouse in some way, or, you know, wherever someone has the children, you know, we need to be producing more pirates at least. You know, the pirates need to have a mechanism to see more pirates in the future. So, right. Yeah, that's, I think, like, you know, like this guy as well, this Rex guy, it's all about
take your crypto earnings and chisel your abs and stuff like that. But it's there is no community in that at all, except for, I don't know, subscribers to his Men of Iron, I don't know, Discord group.
Yeah, you're gonna wake up one day. You're gonna be the better part of 60. You're gonna be completely alone with no one to share your life with. But at least you're gonna have those Hyperborean gains, bro.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Bap. I like Bap. He's funny. I think he's mad funny. But yeah, all those. Yeah, what you were just talking about, Alex. Like all those. This sort of this grift of like self-help, reclaim your masculinity by yourself in a vacuum type thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of space for that. But I think a lot of people just see that as kind of an all-encompassing worldview, and that all truth is derived from this kind of Hyperborean bodybuilding. And I think some truth is derived, and especially if you're like between 16 to 35, a lot of truth is derived. But later in life, you can't really be the very pectoral pirate, I think, or at least it feels a little bit lame to me. But maybe, I represent the Longhouse, so obviously I'm going to say that. But yeah,
it sounds lucrative, that's for sure.
Yeah,
there's a lot
I
of
think
money
like what you're saying, Sirke, about it being you trying to do that in a vacuum is very like important there, because I think that's where they all kind of fall short, like all these types of ideologies. And I think that like it's the same kind of thing with like a Jordan Peterson where he's talking about clean your room. And then people are like, that's actually how you need to fix all of life. Well, of course, you need to take individual like accountability for your lot and do exactly what you can to like make yourself a fucking man and take care of your life and the people around you and be a useful part of your community. And you got to put your own like life mask on or whatever the fuck before you can help other people. That kind of idea. But like, it doesn't stop there, right? Like that's only one piece of the puzzle. And there needs to be some sort of program or at least some sort of side to your ideology or analysis, whatever it is you want to call it, that incorporates a collective approach as well.
Yeah, the qualifier I put on it is it's kind of like it's kind of a break glass in case of emergency sort of approach to things, and that emergency is just that like masculinity is trapped in just a burning fucking building right now.
You're
and
turning
so like
gay.
they're turning their Desmond is amazing, whatever, right? Like, and so I think that it works for people in a pinch. I think that it's kind of it's almost a hierarchy of priorities. I remember I don't know, I've known a lot of people. I went through like recovery myself, and so I've known a lot of people that have been that have gotten sober over the last number of years, and I know a significant number of those people who have gotten a lot out of this shit that we're talking about.
Sure,
right?
Definitely.
And I think that that's great. When we get into the realm of prescribing this at a wide scale for like political action and things, it's like, I just finally read Bronze Age Mindset like a couple weeks ago, and like I'm reading it and it's like, yeah, like this, it's fun and everything, but like this is also like nightmare scenario stuff. Like it's pirate world stuff, right? I don't know. I mean, and that just gets into like, I don't know that like the first condition that needs to be met for like my case for change needs to be that like everyone's quality of life just completely dive bombs and everything gets worse. That's like not the first step that I want to begin on. Yeah. But I that's actually something I wanted to ask you about, Alex, but because I know that a lot of people, feel differently on that, but I feel like if you're starting there, then you're kind of, well, I won't say my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's I think it's that book is probably a very long shit post as well. It's like it's I don't think necessarily that he is advocating for like apocalyptic piracy and all this type of stuff. I think it's he kind of it's a metaphor for a type of man that's almost extinct, and the element in which this man thrives is kind of this, apocalyptic Mad Max type scenario. He's kind of above history. He doesn't really care where he is. He kind of lives for himself, the great man of history. And he also kind of plugs it into this very visceral, very, elemental stuff, that really is missing. Like you said, like this is really the break glass in case of emergency type of vibe, because he's kind of communicating a vibe rather than, prescribing a lifestyle. So yeah, I mean, that's the energy that's missing. And I think that's why the book is so popular. I don't think a lot of people really know how to interpret it. You can't really, it's not like Fight Club or anything. You can't really do Bronze Age mindset. Even the title is like, mindset. It's kind of like, okay, this is kind of the feeling that you should have if you were to be this type of man, the energy that, he wants to describe. And I think it really is missing. Like, women are howling for it. I have to say, in our current constellation, people really want that type of manliness to step up. But the problem is, it is viciously anti-egalitarian. And as much as our current situation is egalitarian, and it is very egalitarian, at least it's pushing egalitarianism through every pore, and it really is emasculating anyone who wants to raise their head above the parapet. Bronze Age mindset is the quintessential anti-egalitarian manifesto. It is about the man, the Übermensch in a way, who is above history, who is above, everything, who's connected to biology in a way that, this gray goo egalitarianism doesn't let you be. So I think that's why it's so popular. It's just like spitting in the face of the lie of egalitarianism. And yeah, it doesn't really tell you what to do, which I think is a very good quality of the book, because it would have gotten in much more trouble if it did.
Well, I'll say one of my favorite aspects of it is that one of the only things I can think of that he actually does outright recommend people do. Two things I can remember: don't ever cop to having read the book to normal people, and he encourages people to carry out fun pranks. And I think that those are both very good pieces of advice.
Impractical Jokers pilled.
Yeah, no, it's 100% just practical jokers pilled.
I would say, like, I think one of the other ends of this is like some of my friends or people I've known that like get caught up in like this like self-help hyper masculinity thing, and like they get very it kind of backfires in this weird way where they start to like overanalyze, like my chin is slightly too wide.
Yes.
They get into this weird physiognomy shit, and honestly, like I know it's supposed to be like Chad and all that. Sure, I get that, but like sounds mad feminine.
That's
to me.
a psyop to get dudes into being more feminine and caring about online stupid bullshit. Like, okay, let's take it back 10 years.
They're
10
like
years, no one wanted. No male was using Instagram. No male was posting like selfies of themselves on the fucking internet. No male's doing any of that bullshit. They're making fun of their friends that are doing that because it's some dumb bullshit. Yeah, and then next thing you know, now it's like, well, actually, it's Chad if you have your chest facing this one way in your pics. So you need to be really careful about how you're looking. Yeah. You got to do all this stuff. You got to analyze your presence online. Shut the fuck up. That's some gay bullshit, dude.
It's literally self-consciousness. And it's like, usually from girls I'll hear like, oh, my legs are not in proportion to my torso and all this weird shit. I'd be like, damn, I didn't even notice that. Like, what? Like, and now I hear that from guys and I'm like, all right, see, this is like, I don't know, whatever. I'm not into all that, but like, I don't know. I like your friend, whatever, with the COVID, with the girlfriend, whatever. Like, I don't know. I would probably not be with that girl personally. I don't think I could handle that. You know what I mean? But I don't know if I don't feel like, but that would just be leaving. I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like, I think this is the big reason why I don't identify as a right winger, or like I have a big block in my brain for a lot of this. Is like, I don't believe people are locked into their identity. Like it often sounds like you're chained to your given set. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really believe that. I don't feel any pressure to fulfill any role as like a masculine figure or whatever. I don't feel any of that. I never do. Like my race either. Like I've never felt any of that. I really don't. I mean, yeah, when I was younger, sure. Like there's moments where you feel like, oh, I got to do this to impress these people or whatever. As I get older, like I don't really feel that. I don't know. I don't know if diversity is like like diversity is our strength, right? That's like a funny quote, or it's like a funny phrase or whatever. But like, I don't really necessarily believe like it's the death of our society. I don't really believe it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see that. I don't think it's, I think it brings new obstacles for sure. But I think throughout the course of history, this is fairly new. Like Alex was saying, obviously this is fairly new, this mix here. But we've been mixing from the beginning, you know what I mean? Like culturally, racially, everything. Like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's all been interwoven.
I agree with you. You know, the thing is, you know, if we take it as it should be taken, like, you know, take it with its challenges and try to overcome those challenges from a perspective of, okay, being conscious and accepting that, okay, you know, this is the type of society we want. You know, we think this is virtuous. We think this is good to have a diverse society. And then let's do what is necessary, you know, accepting the realities of, you know, the challenge that we're facing. But the problem that we have now is not that, you know, it's that it's all kind of swept under the rug, and you're ostracized if you point out the challenges, and it's not ideal. that's for sure.
Yeah. I just wonder like what the solution is, because then the only other solution is to like segment and stratify everybody by their identity, which, you know, and lock everybody like, all right, you need to fall into your role or there'll be consequences. And a lot of this stuff, sort of like that mentality, obviously, like it doesn't make any sense. It's ultimately
a no-go from me, dog.
Well, and look, I mean, at the end of the day, like international travel isn't really going back in the bag, you know.
That's what I wonder too. Like, I just wonder, like, how do we do it? Say I'm down. Like, say I'm down to listen. I'm like, hey, let's try. Let's see what we could do about it. I don't see it. Like, I don't know how to do it. Like, you know, it seems like we're stuck with this.
I think it's really worth criticizing insofar as it's a justifying myth for the fact that, like, again, like, just we bring in immigrants for economic growth when, like, I drive past like a handful of fucking homeless camps every time I go to fucking work. And again, this has very little to do with the value of diversity in and of itself, and this has very little to do with immigrants themselves, and this really has just everything to do with the model.
Well, it's very functional for a specific class of people. And I think that's what it comes down to ultimately.
The globalist pedophiles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The ownership class. I mean, they're going to do that shit. They're not going for economic growth. They're going for their own personal profit. There's a difference between economic growth and individuals' growth of profit. And so that's what they're going for here. They're reaching for and they're importing these people, not because they think, oh, actually diversity is going to make us strong, blah, blah. They're doing it because then they can have a labor base that they can pay under the table, or they can have paid bullshit wages. They want to maybe have them come in and they can put them through the legalization process or whatever. And then they can pay them, way less wages than what they would pay people who are used to the quality of life and labor expectations here. You can bring in a different class of people or a different type of people in the same class that don't have the same material understanding of the place that they're in at the time. So then they can offer them these things and these little back-end things and undercut our own labor market. Now, the solution isn't to say like, oh, fuck these people. This dude that's right here is taking my job. The solution is, why are these rich motherfuckers destroying my labor share in the market? And why are they making it so that I can't have jobs? Why is it actually like an incentive to be able to do that and leave people within your own country who are here already starving and dying on the street? Why don't we try to rehouse those people, rehabilitate those people, and make them proper workers?
Never underestimate how much of an incentive it is to destroy those people, because, you know, the elite, the leadership class exists, defines itself in contrast to the non-elite, the people they distinguish themselves from. So there is kind of an upside in destroying those people or making their life very hard. So it's not just necessarily, oh, what's my material incentive? In a way, it's also, you know, your immaterial incentive is that you get to piss on your enemies, which are, the people in flyover country, Hicksville, you know, the unwashed masses that you're elevated from, you know. So yeah.
Right. The idea like our this empire we live in is collapsing, and the only thing anyone's ever talking about is how some guy in a 4x4 has retrograde ideas about, you know, women. It's insane.